Ah, yes. Another Carl Jaw. What a wonderful guy this he is. He's just one of these loser propaganda guys that just doesn't quit, right? Another 30 for 30. Again, if you like the Patreon page, go over check it out. Even $1 helps. Just show you're a part of the debunking. Let's keep the videos going. We're talking about today, 30 for 30, is how not being against Beijing is the same thing as supporting it. It's a little bit about Korea here. And, kind of shows how it's not always as it seems, right? Carl John wants you to believe this fantasy, right? He says South Korean politician, Lee Jae Myung, I'm probably butchering his name here, how he's not pro China. He's simply pro Korean sovereignty, right? He's not siding with Beijing. He's just resisting Washington, right? He's not pro CCP. He just doesn't want to get involved in Taiwan. But here's the reality. In the world of geopolitics, silence isn't neutral. It's a position. Deciding to not take a position is taking a position. Okay? By choosing to not get involved is getting involved. Okay? And refusing to stand against tyranny, especially one that's this dangerous and the same as standing with it. It's the same thing, right? Let's unpack that. Think about what I'm saying here. He tries to, dress Lee's foreign policy in the language of independence. He says Lee wants Korea to have its own voice, separate from U.S. influence. But notice the bait and switch here. He doesn't say that Lee supports democracy. He doesn't say Lee supports global sovereignty or human rights. He doesn't say that Lee is anti-imperialist in all forms. He says that Lee wants to distance from Washington. Because that's the trick. If you criticize the U.S., you pretend you're being independent. And then quietly bend toward Beijing. It's the classic CCP playbook. And people like Carl Jaw, they're its messengers. Okay, there's this myth of Korean sovereignty. Let's get something straight here. Sovereignty means being free from foreign control. But it also means being free from coercion, blackmail, and authoritarian pressure. The Chinese Communist Party does not respect South Korea's sovereignty. Beijing pushes Korea economically when it installs U.S. missile defense systems, the THAAD. It threatens trade boycotts and restricts tourism as leverage. It demands silence on Taiwan, Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and its own military expansion. That's not respect. It's extortion. So when they say that, they downplay the THAAD system, calling it provocative, what is he really doing? He's not asserting Korean independence. He's responding to Chinese threats. It's not leadership. That's appeasement. And when he says Taiwan is not Korea's problem, what message does that send? It tells Beijing, you can invade a democracy. We won't stop you. It tells the CCP, well, turn a blind eye if you leave us alone. It tells the free world, your fight is not our fight. It's not sovereignty. It's surrender. The CCP's favorite kind of politician. The Chinese Communist Party doesn't need you to wave their flag. They don't need you to praise Xi Jinping or quote every party slogan. They just need you to stay quiet. They need you to avoid criticizing them. They need you to soften your tone. They need you to blame America, Japan, NATO, anyone else. Lee Jae-myung fits the role perfectly. He talks endlessly about reducing American influence. He criticizes the West's interventionism. But he almost never says a word about China's aggression. He has nothing to say about the thousands of missiles pointed at Taiwan. Nothing to say about genocide in Xinjiang. Nothing to say about surveillance, censorship, or military threats going against neighbors. And nothing to say about North Korea, China's closest ally. Routinely firing missiles, if I can speak English, routinely firing missiles over South Korean waters. In a region where the CCP is the biggest destabilizing force, he chooses silence. Silence is not neutral. That silence is compliance. And that's exactly why people call him pro-China. Not because he's waving the PRC flag, Not because he never pushes back. Okay, none of that. But the false binary here is that people like Ja, or people like him, they want you to think that there's a simple binary. Either you're with Washington or you're independent. Either you follow the U.S. line or you think for yourself. Either you join the West imperialism and, chart your own path. But that's a false choice. You can oppose both American overreach and Chinese authoritarianism. You can support peace and still call out tyranny. You can criticize U.S. mistakes, Vietnam, Iraq, drone strikes, and still refuse to bow to Beijing. But that's not what they want. Carl Jha doesn't want independence. What Lee's silence enables is not balance. It's a one-sided submission to the CCP's demands. Okay, it's hidden under the illusion of neutrality. And when you step back, it becomes clear. Nothing standing against evil is standing with it. Not standing against evil is standing with it. Either you fight against it or you don't. But if you don't, you're allowing it to grow. Imagine if the roles were reversed. Let's flip this scenario. Imagine a Korean politician who constantly criticizes China but never mentions the U.S. Imagine they call out the CCP for spying, censorship, and threatening Taiwan. But stay silent on the U.S. military actions over sanctions. Would Jha call that person pro-American? Of course he would. So why is Lee immune from being labeled pro-China when he does the exact opposite? You don't need to carry a flag to pick a side. Sometimes your refusal to resist is your declaration of allegiance, okay? Lee's position isn't some bold defense of Korean sovereignty. It's a cowardly refusal to confront the biggest threat to regional peace. And whether that's rooted in fear, political calculation, or a personal belief, it still amounts to the same result. Beijing wins. Sovereignty means standing up. Let's be real, Korean sovereignty has been under threat for generations. Okay? Japan occupied Korea. The U.S. had outsized influence since the Korean War. And now, China's applying its own pressure economically and diplomatically. So yeah, Korea has every right to assert independence. But true sovereignty means having the freedom to speak the truth. And the truth is that the Chinese Communist Party bullies its neighbors. Okay? It fuels North Korean aggression. It wants to isolate Taiwan and, will use force if necessary, as Xi Jinping has said. It uses economic pressure to silence critics. And it's trying to reshape the entire Indo-Pacific region in its authoritarian image. Any leader who ignores the truth is not asserting independence. Okay? They're forfeiting it. Carl Jha's real agenda is pretty simple. He's not defending Korean sovereignty. He's defending the CCP. It's his brand. He builds his entire online presence by painting America as evil and China as misunderstood, by pretending authoritarianism is just another perspective, by gaslighting audiences into believing that silence is wisdom and neutrality is virtue. Okay, but it's not. It's not the same thing. But the people who suffer under Beijing don't have the luxury of neutrality. Okay, not in Hong Kong, not in Taiwan, not in Tibet, not in Xinjiang. Any of Lee Myung's vision of Korean sovereignty means stay silent while those people suffer, then he's already taken a side. It's not this side of freedom. Man, how is this not so obvious? In today's world, foreign policy isn't a clean choice between allies and enemies. It's a test of courage. It's a test of principle. And while a politician like, Lee Ji-myung here refuses to speak out against the greatest authoritarianism threat in Asia today, and he criticizes America, okay, the United States more than he criticizes the CCP, when he calls for neutrality, while Beijing sharpens his knives and, goes out of his way. That's not pro-sovereignty. That's being a pawn. And history won't remember that as silent. It won't remember that as neutral. It will remember them as enablers, allowing the CCP to grow. Thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe, and have a good day.